Which one? Oh, that's Wayne.
The one through the window.
Oh, are you ready? Okay, are we ready then, Dave?
Whenever you are, I believe.
Okay, I think we're ready up here. So, good evening, everyone. We're here for our planning meeting this evening. We'd like to welcome everybody that's here. I have asked Todd Mitchell, Commissioner Mitchell, to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I did have one individual comment tonight that they dropped their ballot in the box out back before they came in and wondered if it would count. And I think we decided it'll probably count twice. So we'll go ahead and start our meeting tonight then, going through the order that we have on our agenda. And the first item of business is the minutes from November 4th. If we've all had an opportunity to read those, can I have a motion to accept those?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes from November 4th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting.
Second.
That one's today, it'll be September.
September 30th.
You're right.
September 30th. Oh, there it is.
Second.
I make a motion that we adopt the minutes from the September 30th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting.
Second.
Very good. It's been motioned and seconded. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passed. Our next item of business is the zone change and preliminary plat of the Hearst subdivision. And Dave, we'll let you go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I set you up with the wrong agenda there. I apologize for that. If you don't mind, before we jump into that item, we have...
Okay,
We'll
so,
take a quick time out here and make sure that
yeah,
we have the latest and greatest for everybody.
He's filling in for Kevin, and you throw him a curveball in the first item.
already, and I crashed and burned.
We
We'll
brought the
see.
paperwork
I
from
studied the
a,
packet already.
Super nimble, won't miss a beat. We'll
That's right.
get it together.
So we'll go with the preliminary business, which is the 2700 North Interchange study.
I just want to share a couple of thoughts before we let some other folks take the lead on this. We're very, very fortunate as a community to now be planning for something that doesn't happen very often. I think everybody's familiar with what we know as the bridge over I-15 at 2700 North. So that's in between the Main Street interchange and the 4th South interchange to the north in Springville. That bridge is going to be converted into its own interchange. We believe, based on what UDOT's telling us, that work will start on that in, what really is a very short period of time. We think that will begin in 2022, with the anticipation that the interchange will be up and running in 2024. This is something that Spanish Fork City has invested considerable effort into promoting and trying to see happen, going back to the days of the I-Corps project, if you remember that, when the plans were developed and put into play to improve I-15 through the part of Utah County that previously had not been expanded and further developed, largely north of Provo. Back then, I guess that was now 11, maybe 12 years ago. For a variety of reasons, having an interchange at 2700 North was left out of the plans for the I-Corps project, but Our mayors in the past, Wayne Anderson was very committed to working to make that happen. Mayor Leifson has followed suit. Our staff has been in the same boat in city council, and we're really, really fortunate, I think, as well, to have had some help from our legislators so that that's where we're at today. Like I said, UDOT's finishing up with the environmental work, which will pave the way for the subsequent steps in developing designs for the interchange and so forth, with the idea that in just a few years, it'll be open for business. Now, that being said, Spanish Fork City will have access to full half of the interchange on the west side of I-15, and the way I look at it, half of what then would exist, another quarter, the southeast corner of the interchange largely, accessing properties. You have some folks here tonight, Schwartz family, for example. Their property will have very direct access then to I-15 with those improvements, and understanding that we're at this point where development of that improvement is imminent. We've engaged with some great people that have put a presentation together that they'll show in just a minute, with the goal of helping us as a community understand what we should be planning for around the interchange. So I remember now, seems like it was 6 months ago, it's maybe closer to a year ago, we were talking about a project on the east side of I-15 along Canyon Creek Parkway. Commissioner Mitchell raised the question about what that corridor would look like, going north of the hospital up to 2700 North, and that indeed is part of what you'll see more of today. Before I turn things over to the consultants and let them introduce themselves, I want to be clear that really our hope and expectation for this project has been that it will help everybody, as much as anything, elevate their hopes and expectations, maybe priorities for development around the new interchange, so that we don't miss an opportunity as a community. There is very little land, comparatively speaking, I would say across the United States, certainly along the Wasatch Front, that is highly visible and that has very good access to any part of our nation's interstate system. And we're about to see more of that created, which is really where we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can as a community, like I said, to not miss an opportunity, working with the other stakeholders. Certainly the property owners, they play a very significant role in helping to bring anyone's vision to reality, and we really appreciate those that have been engaged as part of this process. But just in terms of, again, what we'll see, it's not necessarily intended to define specifically how things will look and what, for example, maybe the city would require ultimately, but it is, I think, a great window into what could be. And I'll just mention this now. Certainly, I think a subsequent step to having this study completed would be that us as staff work with you as the Planning Commission to perhaps revamp some of our land use regulations, with the idea that the current zoning that exists in the area, which is simply Industrial 1, the idea that maybe we should be more specific and otherwise put a framework in place that will do more to get us to this vision than what we have right now. So that's plenty from me. I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Mr. Kiesler with Parametrics, and Vern, if you don't mind introducing the other folks, that'd be great.
Did the city hire them? Is it the city that did this? Is it the
Yeah,
county?
thank you.
Is it
That's a
how long ago was this ordered?
yeah.
Do you agree with the findings?
So we hired Parametrics, who's teamed up with Zion's Public Finance on this project. What was it?
We started
June, that's right. So roughly 6 months ago. This is a city project, EDC Utah, has contributed some funding to it. We certainly appreciate them being willing to help us get this work done. But this is a Spanish Fork City authorized and administered project.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Vern Kiesler. Tonight we have Christian Kirkham, also with Parametrics. We have Ben Becker with Zion's Public Finance. We're the three that consist of the consultant team of Parametrics and Zion's Public Finance to do this study. We started the study in June, went through the selection process in May, and so we've been working on this for the last few months with the hope of wrapping up the project by the end of the year. We wanted to come before Planning Commission in November and then the City Council in December and have the project wrapped up for you so it doesn't continue on and on. Tonight what I'd like to show is the study area here. The east side of I-15 here, is that second one washed out? And then what we did is expanded the study area. We have on the west side and then the east side. And of course here's 2700 North, and this is where the new interchange will be. So really, it's been a pleasure working with Dave and his staff and the city, as well as the stakeholders committee. And we're going to talk a little bit about them today. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. They can see it a little bit better. So we're looking at this area because that's within the annexation policy, and this is already in the city. So we wanted to look at a little bit. It didn't make a lot of sense with what some of the plans for realignment of the railroad here to landlock this area without taking a look at it as well. Next slide. So as we said, we were procured in May through a competitive process, and then in June we started the project, did a kickoff meeting. We had our first stakeholder meeting, and that's one of the things that we identified with our kickoff meeting is who should be on the stakeholders committee. We identified several property owners to be on that committee, and some are here tonight. And we had our second stakeholder committee in September, and then we just wrapped up our third one here just a week or so ago, and meeting with them. And as of course we're meeting with you tonight, and then in December we'll meet with the city council. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we did right off the bat is we sent out letters. Dave actually sent them out, or we sent them out on his behalf. He signed the letter and sent it out to all the property owners and said, hey, let's survey you guys. So we had a few questions to ask them. Out of the about 15 properties or so, or property owners, we received 7 responses from the 6 individual organizations. Here are the property owners that responded. Next slide. And we asked them a lot of different questions. I think we had a total of something like 10 questions. We didn't want it to be too long and too obtrusive. But we asked who was the representative, if it was the owner of the property or the representative of the property participating in this survey. Next slide. We said, how long have you owned your property? That's always important, right? Look at this. Majority of those folks have owned this property for 15 plus years, right? So that's well vested in the area. Do you plan to sell or develop and retain your property, or sell it and as raw land or entitled land? How do you want to develop it if you want to develop it? Some said ourselves, and others said, hey, I'm going to sell it as raw land and let those professionals that do that do that. So when do you plan to develop? This is telling. Probably the most important survey question, 0 to 4 years. Okay, that was telling to us anyway. Next slide. And then what future land uses is likely the best option for your property? And of course, a lot of people think that the highest and best use is always commercial, right? It's not necessarily always the case, but that's what the property owners said, and some said stay the same. Okay. So some ideas for development in the area consist of diverse commercial with some transitional zoning that would complement businesses. We want clean commercial, maybe light industrial, service station, restaurants, coordinated development guided by a master plan. That would be the most awesome thing, right? is to have a master plan that guides that whole area. We think we have something that you'll like pretty much when you see some of the visuals here. Again, we're not telling these property owners what they have to develop. We're not telling them when to develop, or even if they have to develop, or what the land use that they need to go to. We're going to make some recommendations at the end of the presentation to the Planning Commission worth consideration. That's it. Other survey comments that we got, some, like Young Living, needs to expand, and they'll be expanding on their property. Another family wants to participate in the future of the area, and then we've had some others that express their preference of zoning for office and not light industrial. And of course, Dave just told you that a lot of that land is industrial zone. So let's go to the next one, and some of these land use scenarios, I'm going to turn the time over to Ben Becker and Christian Kirkham to tag team this next few slides for us. Ben, you'd like to come on up? I guess they're going to sanitize this.
All right. Thank you. I'm Ben Becker, Zions Public Finance from Zions Bank. Appreciate being with you, and I appreciate that we were able to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. It's slipping in some areas, and tonight it just seemed really needed, so thank you. Part of our role, Zions, with working with this great team of parametrics, was really looking at what the market would support, so that ultimately there is a plan that is based in market realities and very clearly shows you as a city and property owners what's the fiscal impact, the return to the city, really understanding what's available to the property. And a lot of this was very much closely looking at the impacts of the pandemic on commercial real estate. So just real quickly here, what is doing well right now? This is considering the pandemic. Flex office space, which you're seeing some of this happening already in Spanish Fort. Warehouse, particularly from distribution and transportation in key corridors. And then apartments, townhomes, and single-family homes. This remarkable demand for housing in Utah continues. It continues at an unprecedented rate. It's only been expedited over the last couple of months as we've seen significant out-migration from other states along the West Coast to come here to Utah. These capitalization rates that you're seeing are just showing the returns that are required for investment. It's a valuation metric. The lower the return, the more enticing, or more demanded a property is. The higher the return is suggesting a higher risk. And go to the next slide. And then just what is doing poorly right now? Certain types of retail. This isn't all retail, but retail sales are actually up from year to year in most cities in Utah. It's very significant in some areas. Some cities are reporting 20 to almost 30% increases in annual sales. But a lot of this is brick and mortar or losing sales to online. Last year at this time, 12% of our total sales in Utah were online. This year at this time, they're 26, 27%, which is a substantial change in the way that we're doing retail business. That number was anticipated to be about 18% by 2030 if we would have continued the same trajectory that we were doing, but the pandemic has expedited that significantly. A lot of restaurants and eateries have either largely excelled. We have record sales for some. In-N-Out Burger, congratulations to you on that. Chick-fil-A, a lot of these different businesses who have figured out the model are doing record sales, or conversely, some of them are notably suffering, and we're going to see a huge chain here of bankruptcies, not a chain, but a lot of bankruptcies occur in 2021. We're already seeing pressures from the bank perspective on loan forgiveness and concerns about the adequacy of loans and cash flow of some of these companies. Capitalization rates for retail are increasing, meaning the risk is being seen as increasing. Hotels are doing very poorly for the most part, but there is a rebound, particularly in the third and fourth quarter for this newer product with rates that are in the $90 to $150 a night range. Some of these Best Westerns and Ramadas, Holiday Inns are actually doing quite well. People are taking little staycations, Families are trying to get out for the 2 and 3 day stay as opposed to the 7 nights in Hawaii or whatever it might be. So with that, large resort hotels, spas, conference centers, they're really doing poorly. You're seeing in the summertime in downtown Salt Lake, hotel occupancy was anywhere between 10 and 20%. And 70, 75% is typically that number is the average there. So it's hard to make long-term business out of 10 to 20% occupancy. There will be a lot of consolidation in the hotel market. And then still what's unknown, this great unknown about office space. What will happen with this anticipated significant amount of sublease space for Class B plus offerings? Tenants are really now requiring more flexibility with their leases. We don't know what will happen with people returning to work. I work in the Zions Bank building in downtown Salt Lake, and I am the only person who's been on my floor for the whole 7 months of this fund that we've had. And that's because I have a lot of kids at home and it's tricky to work at home. So we don't know what will happen, but we're seeing investors suggest a little bit of conservatism, particularly in Class B locations. Locations that are right on I-15 that have exposure are still being gobbled up quickly. Those that are pre-leased to 50% are being built, and there is financing available for them. It's becoming a little bit tighter, but it's still going forward. And then affordable housing, there's huge demand for it in Utah, but there's no real clear vision. With rising construction costs, we're losing more and more affordability as we're seeing this huge rise in construction costs that's not being met with the rise in incomes. Go ahead, next one. I think it's you.
Actually, do you want to speak to this and the two scenarios?
Oh, yeah, so one thing that we did on this study is we really wanted just to look at the absorption and what we thought was feasible in this area based on the land that you have in a pre-COVID scenario and then a post-COVID scenario. So ultimately, we ended up with a little bit more aggressive absorption pre-COVID, showing what we thought was feasible from a hotel perspective, residential, retail, and then taking into consideration some of these trends that we learned. Now, we don't want to overreact because we're hopeful that there is a return to some level of market normalcy, but there have been some significant trends that will stick because of this period. And so those we've looked at in this post-COVID, or I don't know if we're post-COVID, scenario where a little bit more conservative on estimates on hotel. We maybe become a little bit more aggressive on some of the opportunities for apartments, and then just pare back a little bit some of the aggressiveness on retail. We're really seeing a change, again, as I said, in those retail online sales. We used to build out communities at 25 square feet per capita on retail space. And now most developers feel like we should be in the 15 to 20 square feet range. So, you can do the math for your own community. If you take off 10 square feet per capita, it ultimately, suggests that there is excess in the market. And, spaces like this, though, on a major corridor where you're going to have a freeway interchange, have a bonus compared to other areas because you're able to attract users from other markets. It's a great place to locate retail in order to capture what we call sales leakage, to get Springville sales and sales of tourists or people moving up and down I-15. So we've considered that in all these different models.
Thanks. Thank you, Bench. See if I can fit this on here. Is this working? Okay. Well, good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Christian Kirkham. I'm a land use planner. So my role on this project was specifically to merge some of the data and the responses that we got on our surveys and our interactions with the stakeholder committee, and bring that together with the data that Bench has provided to produce one of 1,000 possible scenarios. So like Vern kind of prefaced, we're not telling anyone what they should and shouldn't do with their properties. We're trying to showcase a vision of what could be in this area. So just to go back real quick, I know I kind of threw this on Benj because maybe surprised him a little bit, because I helped produce this graphic, but I wanted him to speak to it a little bit as well, because these are numbers taken from designs, their calculations on what could be absorbed in a pre-COVID and post-COVID scenario. And what we tried to do is block out, just to visually see, okay, how many square feet of retail or hotel could we feasibly put in, physically put in this study area. And then we developed that further. So this was our first exercise, and we showed this to the stakeholder committee, and we received some feedback, and also started to hear word of projects that were already kind of in the works or had already received site plan approval. And we wanted to incorporate those into this vision so that we're staying kind of in a realistic world of what's already kind of in the works, but also to make it aspirational. And that's where we get with these visuals. Not everything is set in stone, but there is a development here with the Colina Group, I believe it's called Spanish Springs LLC, that owns those properties. And they're planning for some industrial warehousing. So this is on the west side, just north of 2700 North. And they've got on their site plans quite a few large industrial warehouse buildings, in addition to what could be a service station or a car wash or some kind of retail on that corner. And we paired that with what we've received as far as feedback from the city, speaking with Dave, with interest in hotel, and talking with Benj about how much hotel could possibly be absorbed in post-COVID world, and we looked at possibly 2 hotels situated right there on the corner with great visibility to I-15. Flex office is one of those categories Benj just went over. Those are kind of office warehouses, flex spaces that could be light manufacturing with a front office. And there's quite a bit of that could be absorbed here, and we recommended, fronting Main Street. That's a pretty great location. There's a few buildings that are existing. This is processing food, CSD, yeah.
They cater to the nutraceutical businesses in the valley.
Nutrient supplements. And then, of course, we have Tyndale Ford. And in this scenario, we kind of expanded the auto dealership use. We actually tripled it in size. And with the realignment of the roadways and what's planned with the new interchange, that opens up a lot of this space for potential dealerships. We talked about office. Overall, this area to the west, we saw more fitting for the commercial, industrial, office type uses, just because of their proximity to other similar uses. And the east side, we looked at more compatible with residential type uses. You've got neighboring Springville with some neighborhoods, and we know from Benj's studies that residential is very hot right now. Could be very easily absorbed, and so that's what we're showing in this scenario. And we wanted to show a variety of different housing types, so it doesn't have to all go to one specific housing type. We showed what a little bit of single-family development, your typical subdivision type development, or twin homes and duplexes, all the way up to apartments and townhomes. Assisted living facilities, that was brought up as another potential use that could do really well in this area with the changing of demographics in the city. That could be a very appealing use. And then this 2700 North, we took into account future traffic flow, and with the interchange and access to I-15, that might be a good spot for some more retail, medical office, since you've got the hospital. Those are uses that can kind of build off of each other and then transition into what could be a neighborhood. Overall, as we were putting this together, we realized that there's enough land here to really create a whole community. That's why we wanted to show, and I'll get into the specifics in some of these close-up images. We wanted to show all of the things that go into making up a community, not just the housing, but you've got your church meeting houses, you have your parks and open spaces, sports fields. And there's plenty of room for all of that, and it doesn't need to just be packed with houses. It could have plenty of green space and great access to nature. So a few of these, this is the exact same 3D model. We're just kind of zooming in on a few corners so you can get an idea of, just visually what this could look like. We're looking southwest here, the off-ramp for the new interchange, a couple hotels, that's what these could be, with great visibility, as you can see, to I-15. And then it could be served, I guess, with some more strip retail or commercial pads, restaurants that can build off of the population attracted to those hotels. And then we have here the industrial warehousing, kind of behind that. Here's a view southeast looking, there's the interchange again towards Tyndall Ford. That's an existing building. We're just showing, with the new ramps and everything, how that can fill out with still great visibility for all their inventory. And then you've got the other development behind that. Here's again looking same southeast, but a bit further back, showing roughly how much parking would be required for some of these flex offices. We're showing more office up here, and then some kind of warehousing, storage type facilities back there. A lot of parking required, but great uses, especially with Main Street right there. This is looking southwest on the east portion of the study area. Again, 2700 north right here. This is showing, what some of that medical office, your dentists, your chiropractors, those types of uses could do well right here, and then transitioning into more of those residential neighborhoods. Same east portion, but looking northeast this time, I-15, and then that's where we were just at. Apartments, I know for some people it's a dirty word, so we're just showing it as, that's an option, but this could also completely go, single family housing. There is definitely a need and a market for housing, as you are all very well aware. So we're just showing a variety of housing types. I've got this quick fly-through video, it's 2 minutes. Same model, but we wanted to give you, since it's a 3D model, it helps, show, a little bit of traffic flow and different perspectives what this could look like. So this is phase 1 of the interchange. So this is a tight diamond? Yep. Tight diamond interchange. So again, hotel, retail, you've got pretty good access to those. So the interchange is down here, you're coming off, and then you've got, possible strip retail right there as well. And then there's the hotels again. Whoops. And then there's that service station, Main Street. Again, Main Street right there. So that flex office. Front runner. So there would be some realigning of the rail spurs, and if Vern wants to speak a little more to that, well, step on his toes. There's that retail along 2700 North that we're showing. We have kind of a bird's eye view of the whole development, and this is very conceptual as far as like how the streets are aligned and everything. We kind of patterned it after typical residential developments, but we're not saying the streets have to be aligned this exactly. A little bit of buffering for that rail corridor. You can't really see it here as well. But, could be assisted living facility down here, or anywhere really. And this is showing those apartments. Would likely be podium parking. And this is that rail spur that would have to go through there. There would have to be at least 2 at-grade railroad crossings. That's it for the recommended scenario. Here's just a plan view. Whoops. We lost my presentation. Hold on. Yeah, looking straight down. Showing the street alignments that we put in there, and just conceptually, you know, whoops, there's like a flashlight on this, sorry. There is another project down here that's also applied for site plan approval, I believe.
It's being built.
So they're pretty far down the process already, and that's going in south of Williams Lane.
What is it? Office warehouse flex?
Yep. So with that, I'll hand it over back to Vern with some of our conclusions and recommendations.
So I think taking a look at your general plan, it's worth taking a look and considering a land use change over there on that east side especially. Possibly looking at a whole new neighborhood right there in Spanish Fork. That's a real possibility. Work toward a future annexation. I want to go back one slide. This is pretty important that I just share this with you. Christian did mention it. This is the Sharp Subdivision, Union Pacific Main Line coming through here. You guys are all aware of the Tinnick branch line that comes through, also known as the Tinnick Industrial Lead. There's going to be a realignment of that. They're a little short on funding right now, but they're trying to find the funding to make that connection, okay? So you have Williams Lane down here as an at-grade railroad crossing. You're going to need to retain that at-grade crossing and acquire one more at-grade crossing. The way this particular one is aligned is we went at a 90-degree angle on the new alignment. However, if Spanish Fork and Springville cooperatively work together, this road could be extended down and come in at a 90 as well. And then this property for Springville City gets served as well as this property for Spanish Fork. So just wanted to show you how important that connection is and making sure that you have 2 accesses to serve the density in between the 2 railroad tracks and I-15. We have shared all this information with our stakeholders group. We've got good public feedback. Some are here tonight. And we believe, we call this the Spanish Fork option because it's catered just for Spanish Fork. The first 2 options with pre-COVID and COVID, we kind of let the numbers dictate. Here, we let the land use dictate the numbers. So with that, Benj, Christian, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, Vern?
Go.
Any
Yes.
conflicts, connections with the airport?
My understanding, we had no conflicts with the airport, and we're not in any of their flight path either. So we understand that Spanish Fork now has full control of the airport. Dave, did you want to add anything?
With what we're seeing here, that's true. I actually had a similar thought with the, in fact, maybe, Christian, if you could go back to the image. The office buildings that are adjacent to Main Street, just kind of to the north, 5, 6 stories, so, you know, maybe pushing 100 feet altogether in height. That's pretty commensurate with what General Atomics has, just to the west, which is closer to the runway. And, you know, who knows ultimately what somebody would propose to build along that corridor, but certainly the closer you get to the runway, the more restrictive things are. But given what we're seeing here, I think you could go quite high before the FAA is going to intervene in any way. So.
Other comments or questions from the Planning Commission?
Feedback from the landowners on this? What has been, if you presented in your 3rd meeting, you had landowners at that meeting, any feedback?
Yeah, we've had positive feedback. They really like the 3D models. I think some of the new technology. We actually bought a new program just for this study. And it turned out awesome. As you can see with the visual flyover and the 3D models, they are here tonight. I don't want to speak on behalf of the stakeholders, but let me tell you, everyone that we visited with and attended our meetings are wonderful, pleasant people that we were able to get good, positive feedback from.
And as far as use of land, as far as change, I mean, some of these applications, the city will get together and figure out general plan, like what we're gonna structure those to. But, has there been landowner feedback on that?
On any specific changes to like zoning or that sort of thing, not at all. We haven't gotten, so the way that, in fact, I think we've tried to stress things to date has been that really this is an idea.
Right.
Now, I want to emphasize this as well, though, that, not picking. Sorry, Vern. I just mentioned that the conversations that we've had with property owners so far have really centered around the idea that this is a concept. Really, this is just an idea, particularly here, one scenario that may be representative of a lot of different ways that the properties could be developed, but what I want to stress is that I think this is a very informed scenario, if you will, that certainly does pay attention to customary development patterns, things that maybe take advantage of the different opportunities that exist, maybe make the most of some of the challenges that exist. So for example, I'll call it the Williams property, which is right here. So currently, access to that is horrible. Access to that when there's a connection made from this rail line to this rail line, even with the idea of us maybe being able to have two crossings over to that, it still is going to be really poor. So thinking about the uses that still may be able to function and thrive in the marketplace, what these gentlemen have helped us understand may work there. Again, I would call that a very informed approach as to what could work in the market. And that's certainly something that we felt that we needed with this, and I really think this team has delivered. Anyway, I'll maybe leave it at that.
Great.
So they asked for some feedback, and if you were to ask me what designation to put there, I would have said, well, we probably need to be flexible. Some sort of mixed-use general plan designation allows us the flexibility that I'm seeing as far as potential proposed uses. I like that they've taken into account the traditional office space may or may not come back post-COVID. I think the retail frontage with the warehouse in the back is more likely to fill up. Changing it from 2 hotels to 1 seems smart. High density residential just makes sense to me in this corridor. Being close to I-15 is a smart place to put high density residential. I like the idea of expanding the community in this area, having more rooftops and more people, because I think it benefits the city as far as other retail uses and bringing other businesses to the area. And this is a smart place to do that. I appreciate the presentation. I think it was extremely well thought out, especially in light of COVID. I think that you've adopted and manipulated and changed the uses in a way that makes sense. And like Christian said, it's one of 1,000 ways that it could be developed. And I think it's a great baseline plan as far as what we would hope it would be some variation of what we're seeing. I thank you. I think it's a great idea. And I hope that actually in reality, it gets developed in some form of what we're seeing here in the future.
I really like the assisted living and medical offices near the hospital. I think a rehab type center would be great in that area too, with proximity to a new medical center of that area.
When we originally talked about that idea back months ago, we talked about kind of having like a medical profession zone through there.
I think that second connection's gonna be huge. I think we need to start working on that. with
The rail
Springville.
crossing,
Uh-huh.
absolutely, yeah.
Well, even from Springville, bring it down, so we'll need three on-grade railroad crossings there.
Which is maybe a lofty goal, getting 3.
We love the
But
railroad, though.
we-
Dave, you enjoy working with the railroad company, I heard.
Yeah, the railroad, you just can pass things off just
They're
like
great.
that.
I wasn't aware that the railroad worked with people.
Oh, yeah. We'll send them the meeting minutes, and maybe they will.
So, Dave, one more question for me. So this is the tight diamond design.
Yeah,
That was phase one
uh-huh.
in one of the meetings. Then there's going to be further phases. They're going to be spanned out over 20 years, 15 years, something like that.
I think 15 is kind of
Yeah.
what they're looking at, yeah.
So there's a concern brought up about how this is going to be routed. Has that been further discussed or any feedback more from UDOT on how that
Hey, do you mind if I take a stab at that? You
Please, that's not our.
fix what I say. So we'll both just try to regurgitate, I think, what we've heard from UDOT so far. And UDOT presented publicly last week. I don't know if any of you had a chance to see that. So their expectations and plans for the facility, I think, now are public. First of all, I'd mention that what UDOT's planning to do with this first phase, this type of interchange, mimics the footprint of the ultimate build-out when they convert this style to a different style that has greater capacity. Is that right? Do you understand it? That they won't necessarily be impacting any more property with phase 2 than with phase 1. So that's, I think, important for us as we're trying to work with developers and existing businesses and so forth. For what the ultimate build-out's going to be, I think we can take this to the bank and rely on properties being no further impacted beyond what will happen with phase 1. Of course, for the folks that sell beautiful big trucks here, that's been a big deal for them, and I'm sure will continue to be. Now, this is interesting to me. Due to the distance from 2700 North down to the off-ramp at Main Street, there will be a restriction on your ability to go southbound on I-15 at this interchange. So effectively, you won't hop right into the travel lanes on I-15 southbound here, but rather will get into a specific lane with restricted movement that will basically carry you down to the Main Street interchange, and at that point, you'd enter the lanes to travel south on I-15, but otherwise that I know of, it's going to function fully. Are there other, do you guys know anything that we're leaving out there that's?
No, other than there'll probably be a physical separation between that
Which is
auxiliary
southbound.
lane and the southbound travel lane.
Which has been a concern brought up that the cross traffic there, as is, can be dangerous. And when we're adding in.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate the presentation. I think it was a great presentation. I like the comments. There's one thing that I would like to offer, and that is that if we have anyone here tonight, one of the property owners or someone else who would like to make a comment, that would be great. If you'd come up to the microphone and give your name and your relationship to this project, that would be great. But if there are none, it's okay too. I think one of the things that I appreciated with this presentation is that it is, you know, we're looking at sometime down the road. This isn't going to happen within a year or two, and things may change. But I think that's what we're trying to do, is to give a site map to those who may come and wish to develop. Makes a lot of sense to give them some idea of what we would like to see there in that area. So I think it's a great presentation.
Especially if we're reviewing the general plan. That's wonderful.
Timing's great for that, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what we're looking for.
Some of these setbacks probably are pretty unlikely, but they're beautiful in the presentation, but it'd be nice if we can get them.
There's actually a
Well-
creek there. You picture that?
There is?
Yeah, so that.
Oh, good work. Then this is more likely than I thought.
And incidentally, again, just to kind of emphasize some things Christian pointed out. Again,
And this one right here on the corner.
yeah, so this exists. The folks that own this actually are looking at ways to better utilize what they think is some surplus property they have around their building. These 5, and I guess we'd say 6, that building up there, like Christian said, the Colmena Group has plans to build all of those. They're among the most capable builders of really big concrete tilt-up structures. They have a great clientele, well-known throughout the Intermountain West, very capable. We'll see them break ground, I think, on this building here before the end of the year. But just to try to point out, one thing that we hope to be able to do with this information is to next sit down with them. And they've been engaged as part of this process. In fact, I talked with them about this layout just a couple of days ago. And to maybe see if they'd perhaps consider something else with these 2 southernmost buildings. Simply from the city's perspective that realistically you could put really big office warehouse or manufacturing type facilities a lot of different places, but there are only so many uses that
Can go off the I-15 right there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
are
agreed.
so many places that you can put certain uses. So different things like that, and I think in a number of different ways, this becomes a very helpful marketing tool for the city as we try to both work with people that we're trying to attract to the community and also the existing property owners to make
This
things happen.
C-store right here, Dave, it seems this needs to develop some more. It's a little green to have something like that, but certainly in the future, it seems like it might be possible.
You know, driven largely by such great access to that, and you're right, the potential for there to be a lot of employment.
Yeah, the
In
things
that
we
part
talked
of
about
the world.
recently, they're gonna be, that there's gonna be a lot of traffic
Right.
Right.
added.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
as at the
North Main Street's going to develop.
and yet, if it ends up making more sense to put an office building there or something like that in the future,
Right.
I don't think that disrupts what we're trying to
I
do
think
here at all.
Mixed use makes sense, just to give you the options.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. If there's no further discussion, we'll move forward with our agenda tonight. Thank you again to you guys. I think it was a great presentation. Thanks. Now we'll move on to our next item on our agenda, number 3, the zone change, a preliminary plat for the Hearst subdivision. Part of this discussion will be a public hearing, but first we'll hear from, is it going to be Dave? Nope. There. Brandon, thank you.
Thank you. So what we see here, and we do have the applicant here tonight, we'll turn some time over to him in just a moment. What we see here is a highlight of the area. It's known as the Hearst subdivision. Should be familiar to you. The applicant, I believe it was December of last year. He's leaning away, but I believe it was December of last year that he came before you. I think since that time, we've had quite a few new commissioners, and so initially what the applicant was looking for was something similar to the Canyon Breeze development that is to the north. With the direction from the Planning Commission at that time, the applicant then revamped the plan and is here before you with both a preliminary plat and a request for a zone change on the property. So recently the property did go through a general plan designation change that was approved by the City Council after it was looked at by the Planning Commission. And that change was made to the medium density designation. Generally, zones that are consistent with that are the R16, R18, and the R19. The applicant's request tonight is for the R16. And so if we go ahead and jump to the next slide.
And this is a true R16 subdivision?
This is what we call a standard subdivision,
Very
and so
good.
they do meet, for instance, the lot width, the lot depth, and the
minimum
area
lot-
requirements.
Minimum lot requirement.
Minimum lot requirements, yes, correct. This should also look familiar. This made its way through with the general plan designation change to give the Planning Commission and Council an idea of the proposed development. I believe also with the general plan designation, we looked at some housing elevations as well. So what we have before you tonight is twofold. So one is we're looking for the Planning Commission to make a recommendation on the zoning of the property. Currently, it's an RR, rural residential zoning. Many times that's used to allow the continuation of agricultural activities, or other times it's used as a holding zone until a more definitive land use plan or zone can be put in place. The other thing that we're looking at is, as mentioned, is preliminary plat approval for the standard subdivision. Now, the Planning Commission is the approval body for a standard preliminary plat. And so my hope would be any motion on the rezoning, you would make the plat approval contingent upon that rezoning being approved by the City Council. So what we have before us is 18 residential lots. This would be single-family detached product. There on the north, the top of the screen. So this would be northeast of the property. There is a proposed detention basin, which would be landscaped and done beautifully as far as servicing both open space needs as well as detention needs. And that the city, the improvements are completed. And so what we have before you is a recommendation there with a proposed zone change as well as preliminary plat approval. The conditions that you see listed, most of those are red line review comments and items that were specifically brought up by the DRC when they looked at this project prior to your review. Is there any questions for staff?
Are we requiring masonry walls, fences?
No. Generally, a masonry wall is required when we're looking at master plan developments or multifamily developments where we might have a different land use surrounding that project.
Okay. Do you know if these properties here have fences already back here?
I don't
Because I know
believe-
this entire road does.
Yes,
And likely so does this one.
most likely as well. To the north and to the west, I'm getting a head shake no.
Okay. Even here on the east?
I think it's a livestock fence, so
Okay.
just a
I-
farmer's wire fence.
And I know there's a huge grade difference here, so there's a natural, somewhat of a natural barrier anyway, but.
Correct, yes.
I'm just thinking here and then. Okay.
So for development, the Beardall property here, how's that gonna work with, when they decide to develop? It looks,
We can jump to
like
the
it's-
GIS map if you don't mind, Mike. And if you zoom out a few clicks and maybe add on the general plan designation. Maybe zoom out one more, please. So if you look, there we go. So we had quite a few contour lines that we're showing. So the property in question is part of this yellow node here. So here's the Hearst subdivision proposal. UDOT acquired this property here, and the idea is that eventually you'd have a four-way intersection at this location, and this would be closed off. And so I can't really speak definitively to what options might exist for the Beardall property. It is deep, most likely would have to coordinate with additional adjoining property owners. And then we would also have to see how any realignments or where a cul-de-sac might be placed once this is severed from Highway 6.
So on the back part of Barbara's property, of the Beardall property right there, how is the elevation compared to the Hearst property right here?
If you don't mind, zooming back in. Come off the second side.
Gradual.
Is it gradual?
It's up. You can see it there.
Okay.
Yeah, so the steep gradient change is there to the north.
Right. It looks like she's getting boxed out there, but there's potential for development for her right there.
So by code, Brandon, there's no requirement to have a fence, because it's a subdivision by right.
Yes.
No, and there's nothing in the code like that? Okay, got it.
Any other questions for staff, or would you like to hear from the applicant at this time?
Let's hear from the applicant.
Sounds great.
Good evening, Sean Hansen. And I guess I can just take any questions that you have, or if you want me to kind of go into some details, so.
Why don't you give us some details first?
Okay. So, it was actually 11 months ago, in December we came and we kind of introduced the plan, and probably a little bit too ambitious, was we were looking at kind of the density that was across the street. And so as from the commission said, hey, talk to some neighbors and see what kind of feedback you get. And so we went through that process, and we kind of came back and landed at this, which is about half the density that they're doing across the street. And then we went through some processes with the staff, and we ended up doing the text amendment to the master plan, and so that we could be congruent. So we originally thought, hey, what's the best what's the best zoning that we should go for, and we came up with the R16. But this actual development, one of the things, there's not one lot on here that's less than 6,000 square feet. And if you average the size out, you see there's various sizes. The average size is 8,000 square feet. And so it's going to create a pretty good, various size of homes, and, for this little, and it's a little, kind of tuck away, fill in neighborhood that I think probably is quite ideal. The way it laid out nicely, and, and then with the things that were around it, it feels like the streets, and it's not going to create that much more traffic, because it's just a right, and then you're out onto the main road right there, the collector. And so we're actually pretty pleased with how it turned out, and a lot of that was direction from the staff, and just kind of putting our heads together to come up with the best idea. So there is going to be, it does drop off a little bit, so this will be kind of tucked down, and I think it'll provide some nice little neighborhood feel for people. So we're excited about that.
Are you building as well?
No, we're not building. We do have a couple local guys that will probably take that, and we've reached out to them, and I'm not sure if they're in this, but we did show some of the concepts and designs of the homes that we would be looking to put in as well.
Will the lots be for sale, bring your own builder, or lots for sale and your builder build?
Our builder will build it, so it'll be pretty congruent, and they'll take it from there. So.
Is there any problem with groundwater in that area? It's kind of low in there.
Yeah, I believe there was a French drain it goes along the backside of that property, and it helped. And so but we did do our soil samples and everything came out, you know, pretty good, so, we didn't find much groundwater issue. What's that? Oh, yeah, we're not gonna do basements on that one side, or especially on that side. Are we doing them?
On the
other
east
road?
side?
On either side.
No basements.
No basements, okay.
Any HOA, any CCNRs?
No, no,
No CCNRs?
There's not one up at that side of the hill.
yeah.
So what is the zoning for the homes in this neighborhood over here? I should have asked staff that.
Brandon,
Yeah,
the question was about the zoning on the northwest
like,
of this.
this neighborhood,
Right
these
here.
guys.
That would be R112.
Okay.
So, so one thing, so if you go back to the plat map, these guys' backyards, these are a lot smaller than these. And it seems like it would kind of be nice if they were closer to that size. Is there a way to, if it were me, I'd recommend like a R18 instead of a R16 there. To kind of be more of a blend into that part of the neighborhood. But, and anyway, yeah.
There is one thing about this one is that this is a cul-de-sac subdivision, which makes it its own neighborhood more or less with these lots. These do seem to be, you know, you've got 3 or 4 lots right here that seem awfully small. But again, you said that none of those are.
Those are all 6,000 and
Those
pretty
are
much right.
6,000.
Yeah. So the way it kind of tucked in there is, I believe they're about 100 feet deep and 60 feet wide right there. And so it ended up, you know, and with the detention, you know, it kind of fit in there nicely. And we realize that it's a little bit smaller, but, you know, sometimes, you know, maybe it seems nicer on the eyes to see all the lines connect and stuff, but it does, it's a little bit of a variation. You know, building costs are going up, and so, you know, the costs generally just get passed on to the resident. And so some people are looking for a little bit of a downsize. They don't want the biggest yard, and it's gonna be, you know, a lot of single level living, but then also there will be other size homes as you get down into the cul-de-sac part that would be, you know, bigger homes. Some of those, a few of those lots are around 13,000 square feet, you know, which is pretty size, you know, so that's gonna be a good sized yard to take care of, and, you know, so.
But these lots along here, although they're much deeper, they also have the hillside that they'll have to contend with.
Yeah,
So
there'll be some type
in
of,
reality, they won't have the use of the entire lot unless they contend with the hill.
yeah, that's, but I think with a lot of those, you know, we'll have to look and see how it's laid out, but, there should be, you know, fairly usable land because it does drop off sharply, so I'm not sure what type of, you know, we'd probably get to that.
Sean? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Shauna.
Would it be the same kind of, so will these have the same kind of backyard as the homes that are over on this part of the hill? They just have just a little bit of backyard and then a super steep hill? These guys do?
Oh, do
Over
they?
Not
here?
that steep.
It's not, this won't be as steep as that.
No, because it's kind of where the line is. You lose, I don't know if there's, like right now, there's a corral right there, around corral and other buildings. So it drops off sharply right there, and then kind of right off from that, you know, that's where, so I think they will have actually quite a bit of usable space for the backyard.
Yeah, the way the Hearst property drops down off of the hill, the backyards on that north side, they go right into the hill that doesn't include mine.
Just going up to that line.
Oh, well, I just.
We can hear you, but the
Recording
Recording
can't.
can't.
I was just saying that the subdivision lays out really well for an infill piece. Because the backyards don't include going up the hill. I mean,
Okay.
it goes to the base of the hill comes down. It's not a long, drawn-out hill. It
Pretty
comes
steep.
down,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, the backyards go into the base. You don't go up the hill,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Would you state your name, please? for
Rob
everybody?
McNeil.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob. Are there any other questions for the applicants?
Yeah, the 6,000 square foot lots, you have a two-story option, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. And then are you planning on doing CCNRs or allow the city zoning to control?
With
Yes,
the
that is-
standard, do we have to have CCNRs?
We don't require them.
With the standards, no.
Nope.
You don't have to.
Oh, you're not planning on it? Okay,
It'll go under the standard.
okay.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, seeing no questions, because this is a request for a zone change, we will have to go into public hearing at this time. And so I would entertain a motion to go into public hearing, or do we need a motion? We can just go in, right? So we'll go into public hearing at this time. So if there's any of the people here tonight that would like to address this issue and this zone change, we'd welcome you to come up and state your name and where you live and what your comments are. Seeing none, we'll go out of public hearing. Any more comments from staff?
Yeah. There's your contours laid over the lots.
That's good.
So as you said before, your backyard of lots, oh, my microphone's close enough, but lots 1 through 5 will have, one will have a little bit of work to be done on the side here.
Yep.
15 feet there, but anyway, it's mostly along that back line. The other lots here would have 8 to 15, 20 feet of fall through the lot.
Yes.
Pretty consistent. These would be all at the back.
Perfect. That's great. Thanks. Thanks for
What?
bringing that.
Just comments on this. From what they presented before, I really like this. It looks nice. I think it fits in with across the street and will fit in with the neighborhood that's already currently there. I would expect the price point of these homes going in will be greater than the price point of the existing homes when they first were moved in. So you're not gonna see that much of a demographic change from what's going in there. And I think it lays out like a nice little community within a bigger community.
And considering the size of the project, there's quite a bit of site work that has to be done before you can even begin your construction work. You can tell what business the Hearsts were in. A lot of concrete in there, so those buildings were built to last the millennium.
So, sorry. Can I ask Wayne about, do you guys have any specific plans for yours and Barbara's areas of development in the future? And how that'll blend with this?
I can't answer everything there, but talking to Barbara, she has never wanted to sell any of that property that she owns. She wants to keep that. I don't know what her plans are down the road doing with it, but she does have a right of way through there to get into the backyard next to where my mom lived. But she's never had any interest in developing that property, selling it. I mean, I've approached her several times and the answer's always no.
Good to know.
So I don't think you'll see any changes there. Mine, I plan on staying there. I do have a piece that's west of me that maybe could be a building lot at some point in time. I don't know if that'll happen, but, I mean, that's an option that I do have.
Not a bad idea for that either.
No.
Thank you.
Great piece of property.
Sometimes we get hit up about the size of the lots, but I think it's so much better than what you see across the Canyon Road.
Yeah.
Very much.
And like you said, it just fits in there nicely, so. I mean, and that was, I guess our intent was to make a nice neighborhood and be good neighbors.
And I agree that this layout with the cul-de-sac makes a lot of sense. It makes it its own neighborhood, and if the construction is done right and people keep those lots up, it could be a pretty little neighborhood.
Should be, I think so, yeah.
Hearing that, Commissioner Mendenhall, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat contingent upon city council adopting the recommendation from the Planning Commission, which recommendation is to approve the zone change from RR to R16 and to adopt the staff's recommendations as outlined in the staff report.
We have a second.
I'll second.
We have the motion and a second. All in favor? Do we need to have a roll call vote because it's a zone change or not?
You don't have
I don't think so.
You don't have to.
If you enjoy it that way.
Then I'd have to, no. All those in favor of the motion that's been seconded?
Aye.
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 Any negative votes? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you.
I want to know what tool Brandon just used there. That was pretty amazing.
That was cool.
It's I don't know the exact model or make, but we initially got it so that our building inspectors could use it to spray down their vehicles as needed. But
Which
we
is probably
found
awesome.
that it saves cleaning time around the office dramatically, so we kind of have fun with it.
Good deal.
Ultraviolet and disinfectant.
It looked
We'll
like-
pass it around.
It looked like Star Wars. I mean,
It's worth checking out. It is.
They got it from Delta.
Okay, we'll go on to item number 4 on our agenda, a conditional use permit. This will also have a public hearing with this. Brandon, if you'll go ahead.
Thank you. And I thought I had printed off a copy. Somehow left it on the desk, but this one's rather straightforward. This cell tower, similar request, came to you about 2 months ago, I believe. Since that time, the applicant emailed me and said, due to a merger between Sprint and T-Mobile, we need to swap out a few more antennas than what was recently looked at. And so what we did was we took the conditions, those should be listed in your staff report, that were applied from your last review, and added those to the motion. And so the motion is to recommend approval of that conditional use permit, which would allow the applicant to swap out a few antennas. If we jump to the next slide, Mike. Oh, sorry, this is an aerial of the site. So there you see the existing structure. The pole is just to the south of it, right next to the transfer station, or sorry, substation. Yeah, we don't want a transfer station there. So there you see the antenna on the left, and then you see the additional antennas on the right. And so I believe in the motion we have some limitations as far as hours when they can be doing the work, also notification to the power department, and I believe there's one more, but I don't have it off the top of my head. I apologize.
That they notify the power department.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Any questions for staff before going into a public hearing? I don't believe we have a representative from the applicant here.
Does this proposal, is this for 5G capabilities or not?
I'm not aware of that.
I would imagine that they would have asked for that.
Yeah, I'm not aware at this point, sorry.
And this is located on Spanish Fork City property.
Yes.
Very good. Any other questions from us? If not, then we'll go into public hearing on this proposal. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to this proposal? Seeing none, we'll go out of public hearing. Any further discussion or questions for staff? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that the 2500 East cell tower modifications be recommended for approval to the council based on the finding conditions of staff.
Sorry, this would actually be for.
Oh, we are, okay. The approval of the modifications.
Very good.
Based on the findings, okay?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We'll move on to number 5 on our agenda, an annexation of Swift Creek. Dave?
Thank you. The subject property that we're talking about here is almost a stone's throw, at least it feels like it is, from the Hearst property. That was
Have
on
to have
your
a good
agenda
arm.
earlier. It's just kind of barely off the edge of the image that we have here. So this is north of US Highway 6, north of the railroad tracks. It's adjacent to some property that the city owns, which incidentally we're working now with the developer to develop the city-owned property over here. And I think largely with that progressing in the way that it is, we as staff really do feel like it's time to start considering additional annexations in this part of the community. Mike, I'm going to ask you in just a minute to maybe pull out and show us the zoning in a broader area so we can kind of see how the city boundary is currently configured out here towards the mouth of the canyon. It's a little bit unique. Yeah, that's probably perfect. If you turn on zoning, that really makes it pop, if we can get it on. Sometimes our mapping's a little bit finicky, but so the properties that are colored here, those are currently in Spanish Fork. So you can see we have a fairly good swath of land in the area that is still in Utah County. The eventual city boundary, at least what we've agreed upon with Mapleton, follows this rail line right here. So we anticipate annexing all the way up to that rail line. And I can't remember exactly when it was, but in the fairly recent past, the city's growth boundary was amended to go all the way out to that eventual city boundary at that railroad track. So amending the growth boundary to include this property was a pretty strong signal that the city council made to suggest that this is the time to start to plan for and to prepare for development. The development that we're working on right here, we think certainly will be a game changer in terms of making the development of other properties in the area feasible as utilities are extended to that property. And certainly we're talking more and more to property owners in the area about potentially developing, just given kind of that evolution that's occurring. So those are some of the things that have led staff to support the idea of annexing this property here, and we honestly anticipate having similar discussions over the course of the next few years about the other properties that are still in the county in the area. Now that being said, Utah's annexation law is, I would say, certainly a little bit quirky. And there were some changes made just a couple of years ago that I don't believe helped anything. But that being the case, the approach that we as the city are taking, working with the applicant on this, is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. There are two tracks, as I understand it, that you can pursue to make an annexation happen. One is called annexation by petition. The other is called annexation by resolution. The only one that I've ever worked with before until now is an annexation by petition. This is an annexation by resolution. And that option, by way of annexation to resolution, makes it possible to annex properties even if property owners don't consent to be annexed, which is really, in my mind, aside maybe from zoning, the only thing that I'm going to finish talking about here. It's the only thing that I think really is very relevant, given what we're recommending as staff happen. This is the subject property here. It's these parcels. We as staff aren't comfortable at all about leaving this area in the county, having kind of that finger particularly given the amount of frontage that would exist then on a road that's kind of part city, part county. So we've asked the applicant, and they've been, I would say, diligent in obtaining the consent of Rocky Mountain Power that owns this property here. Likewise, we've had conversations with the Baum family who own this property here. And maybe before I talk more about that situation, let me just mention that relative to zoning, when there was a small annexation done here this year, the city council approved R115 zoning on the west side of 3400 East where it crosses the railroad tracks. And we think that's certainly an appropriate zone to consider for the properties that the applicants have an interest in. For the other properties, we would recommend probably a different zone, a rural residential zone for the Rocky Mountain Power and the Baum property, and maybe to talk more about that. As staff, we have made a recommendation, that is the Development Review Committee, to include the Baum property in this annexation. And this is where things for me get to be really, really sensitive. We've met with the Baum property, we've met with the Baum family. I've appreciated them taking the time to meet with us and talk things through. I'll let them speak for themselves, but I understand that they don't want to be annexed at this time. And we certainly want to respect their wishes. That being the case, even though legally they could be, as I understand it, left out of the annexation, that in effect would create an island of county property surrounded by city property. And that's a situation that we don't think is healthy. At the same time, we don't feel necessarily that there's a big need to put the Baums in a position to where maybe they feel like the city is trying to strong arm them into anything. So in my view, that recommendation to include the Baums with this annexation, I would call that a pretty soft recommendation. And that's something that you can weigh in on, but that is indeed staff's recommendation. So just to recap, for a number of reasons that I think are spelled out in the staff report, we recommend that the annexation be approved, and that the property that I think is currently owned by Zions Bank be zoned R115, and that the remaining properties be zoned rural residential. That being said, so there's staff's recommendation, just by way of kind of the process that we would go through from this point. I understand that with the annexation by resolution, the earliest time that this would be on a council agenda is in January. So it's not like this is just gonna all of a sudden land on their agenda in a week or two. There's still some additional time. But that's where it's at.
One additional property to the Zions Bank that would be zoned R115 there by 34.
Is that not Zions Bank? Thanks for pointing that out.
No. That is Zions.
It's on the corner, right?
That one.
Yeah, thanks. Who does own that? I thought that was.
That's Hanson's.
Dave,
That's right. Thanks. Yeah. And you have
I have.
control of that. Okay, thanks.
Sunrise
so
North.
staff's recommendation is to annex in these two parcels.
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
Does Sunrise want to be annexed in as well?
Yes.
Okay, and could you pull up the general plan? What's the general plan for that area?
Estate density. Estate density.
And estate density residential, is that different than R115?
Yes.
It's the next one bigger, right?
Right.
No, state, R115, I think, would be the most typical zone that you'd see in that estate density designation.
So you can do the zone, you can zone it estate density.
That'd be the
Or-
general plan.
That's the general plan, so R115 is consistent with estate density? Okay.
Exactly, yep, just the way you said it.
Perfect. Good question.
Any other questions?
What are the drawbacks to staying in the county for the, what are the advantages and disadvantages for staying in the county?
So again, I don't want to act in any way like I'm speaking for the bombs, but just to share staff's perspective, and this is something that we've given a lot of thought to, that we are aware of. There's not any disadvantage. For example, no increase in property taxes. They wouldn't, as we understand it, jeopardize the current greenbelt status of the properties by being annexed, which is partly why we're as comfortable as we are in recommending that they be annexed at this point in time, be included with this annexation. They might see it differently. And
Dave, did I, it seems like we had a discussion about some property in this area before, and I think it was prior to the sale of the property by the city to the developer that's going to be developing there in between the tracks. And it seemed like to me that the bombs were there and asked that they be included in that. Or that was it that you wanted to be excluded? Would it be appropriate to let them speak at this time?
I think that's really important. Yeah.
I'd like to hear from you guys and understand what your feelings are. I'd like to hear from you both.
So I'm Mark Baum, and the property owner. My mother actually lives there, and my brother actually farms the power company area. He's got a lease on that for 4 years. My mom and dad bought the property in the early 60s. She's had it that whole time. We've been here, I think this is our third time now in the last year, about annexing, about changing the zones. So I think Dave has talked to us, let us know what was going on. So we appreciate that, but at this time, my mother specifically wishes to stay in the county, and I would like to make sure that she can keep that wish.
Are there specific reasons to not want to?
Well, there's actually no value for us to come into the city. We have water, we have sewer, we have internet, we have garbage pickup. So there's nothing that the city's offering us this time that would be of value. I think the other thing was, I did find out that the taxes would be a little bit lower when I called the county, but they said it would be pretty insignificant, but they also said to watch out for city bonds, because right now we don't have to pay for any city bonds. So I don't know if Spanish Fork has any city bonds, but I do know that when you guys talked about the sewer lines having to come through, that most likely those would have to be paid for by the residents that end up being connected to them, which would be probably on us to have to pay for that also. So I guess for us, at this time, we're still farming it. There's no reason to develop it. So we didn't have any need to be into the city. Mom, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
I'd like to hear from you. That's exactly.
I thought Bertine Baum, I thought when they talked about Shirley Hearst place over there, it was that corner started their development. I haven't seen any development start there. Why should I annex to the city? Because the things I wanted in the city are not up there. I want sewer, water, and I don't know what the city wants from me if I annex to the city.
If you were to annex into the city, would you like water and sewer?
It would be, but look where you've got to come to get to me.
Well, with the project that's going on now, just to the east of you, and now this annexation, it will be in the area.
Oh,
of course,
yes.
you'd have to pay to
I
connect.
realize that.
I know that,
Now, is that a Springville project, Mapleton project, or is that a Spanish Fork project?
The Spanish
Fork City. Mm-hmm. The reason I ask is that I lived in Palmyra for some time, and my wife, when we moved from there, the thing that she was so excited about is she didn't have to worry about her pump or her septic tank anymore. So you know, that was a great deal, and if we would have ever had the opportunity to hook on to the city services, that would have been a great thing for us in Palmyra. And so, in this case, it wouldn't necessitate that you'd have to hook on. That would be your option. And so, you know, I've known you guys and that property for a long, long time now. So, you know, we'd like to accommodate whatever you guys would like to do. At the same time, if we leave you out of this annexation, it does create a little bit of a problem for the city in that, you know, we've got this narrow little piece that would not be in the city. And the county likes to see, so does the city, we like to see nice straight lines and whatnot as we go through that whole process. So that's why I wanted to have you talk to us and let us know what your feelings are about that.
Has the property of Marvin Stewart been annexed to the city?
Marv's property has not at this time, I don't think.
Which property is that?
It has not, that I know of.
Which one's that?
Okay, Marv Stewart's down on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the power company that owns 7 acres in there.
Yep.
And then there's our house. So if Marv hasn't annexed, the power company hasn't annexed, we're not making an island. We're still just in the county.
Except we are looking at annexing the power company's part of that property.
As well as you.
And so my question also is, if you're farming that Rocky Mountain Power Company area, then you would not want that zoned R115. You would want that zone.
It wouldn't matter.
And
I don't think it would matter for their greenbelt status.
we would leave that RR until it
I
changed.
don't see them developing that property into much because the power lines go right.
That's
along
exactly
there.
right.
It takes up about 2/3 of it with the power lines,
But
Yes.
going to R115 wouldn't change what you are doing already there.
unless they raise my rent.
Well, they're in the business, so. No, I don't think that would be a problem because in these areas that have developed, you know, you can't build underneath those power lines and stuff, and so,
There's quite a buffer zone.
right.
Can I ask, was the power company specifically asking to be annexed, or were they just okay with it if it happened?
You can let the applicant speak to that.
Is there enough?
Yeah, I can speak about that.
Okay, let's,
Okay, thank you.
Mother?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. We might have you come up again.
Rob McNeil is my name. I have the Zions Bank piece, the Sunrise piece, and I've also been working with Rocky Mountain Power. So when I picked up the Zions Bank piece, it came with an 80-foot right-of-way easement right through the Rocky Mountain Power land, right to here. Yep. And right now, that piece has been moved down here. And it is done, and we have that renewal, and we have a new survey, and we have realigned that 80-foot right-of-way easement down here. Yep, there it is. And that is done through Rocky Mountain Power. And so Rocky Mountain Power is just fine. They just said, we actually have a written letter from Rocky Mountain Power saying that they are okay with us annexing this property in right here.
So that, I guess, to my point, it doesn't sound like they're insisting on it, they're just okay with it, which means if you could avoid annexing them and us, you could still annex the other part.
But then you'd have a
Be an island.
county road.
Can I comment on that?
How's that gonna
Go
work?
ahead.
Say it again?
I think what Mr. Baum is talking about certainly is a viable option. Annexing these properties here and leaving these in the county. At the same time, we as staff would not recommend that happen for these properties to develop, probably more specifically this one. There's likely going to be a road here, and you know, even at a relatively low density of development, there will be enough homes here that they will need another access And that likely won't happen to the north for a long time at this, well, for likely a year or two. So they will rely on some type of a street, which they have the right to build today, through the Rocky Mountain Power property to get out to 3400 East. And I think it's that conversation that got us as staff to start talking with Rocky Mountain Power about this. And incidentally, we talked with Rocky Mountain Power about all of the properties that they own in the area. For example, you'll also maybe remember one up just north and east of Maple Mountain High School that was the subject of some conversation a few months ago. So again, that could happen, and if that's something that the Planning Commission feels strongly about, then you can make a recommendation to leave both the Rocky Mountain Power property and the Baum property in the county, but that's not what the Development Review Committee has recommended.
I had one other little question.
Sure, come on up.
If we did annex, how do we still keep our green belt?
It'll stay, as long as
With
you
the
have
county?
5 1/4 acres.
Does it stay with the county, or
Yes.
does it stay with the
Well,
city?
it would stay in the city as well, as long as you are still farming it and you make a little bit of money on it. It'll stay in the green belt.
Okay, and then the other question was, if I can get city water, what do I do with my well? Do I still can use it for irrigation, or do I have to close it?
You don't have to close
No,
it.
that well right is yours.
It's a water right.
And it's an actual piece of property that you could buy or sell.
Yes, I realize that.
And
but
there would be, the city is interested in wells as well as individuals, and that would be up to you.
ours isn't a great big well like
We would
Bill
buy
said.
the well rights.
You'd buy the rights, not the well
We wouldn't
itself.
buy the well rights either.
You don't need them. The city doesn't need those rights now, so, that's fairly valuable commodity right now with people building in the county.
Then we own strawberry
itself.
water rights, and
Still yours.
It's all still part of your ownership.
we own, river
East
water
Bench.
rights also
East
for
Bench.
that. So we just keep them if we annex.
Absolutely.
Okay, that was some of the questions. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
So while you're there for a minute, so,
Stay there for just a minute.
or maybe when you're, sounds kind of.
We're not gonna let
So
you
it
go
sounds
yet.
like your concern, if I can just summarize to make sure I've got your concerns. It sounds like your concerns are that you have a fear of prices increasing, or maybe losing some of the
Well,
tax advantages you have.
I just can't see any reason to be annexed right now. When you start putting those houses in, then I can see, okay, I better take advantage and annex then, but is there an advantage to me to annex right now?
To probably not to you, but when the houses start going in, there's a lot of infrastructure that's went in before that, that would be a disadvantage to the city and to the developer if it hadn't been done previous.
When would like the sewer and other city services be available in that area? Like if you're developing, are you talking years?
They're,
Do you mind
they're
if
fairly
we-
soon.
Mr. Clark has something queued
Oh,
up, kind of to present on that specific question.
Perfect.
Maybe while he's getting that loaded up.
We're sorry to make you keep getting up and down.
And I'm trying to be clear that we're not necessarily trying to persuade anybody. Certainly respect people that have lived and farmed property out here for as long as these folks have. That being said, in terms of being annexed now versus in the future, and this is maybe nominal, but it would be a few $1,000s to annex in the future. Now, if somebody's annexing with the intent of developing, they typically bear that cost, for a property owner. But annexing at this time is relatively painless in that regard. For the Baums, I think it's appropriate to say it's a free ride, relative to the application fee and, you know, the engineering work that's required and some of those kinds of things. So that's maybe one of the.
Has that been made clear
Maybe-
before? Is everybody aware of that, that it's more expensive later?
I think that's understood.
It'll save you money now. It'll definitely.
Not that I'd really emphasize that necessarily, but it would be a totally distinct process to annex that property.
Dave, one other question that they should be aware of that they asked was how long before some of these services reach that area? And I think I know the answer, but could you answer it for me?
Perfect segue. So, Mr. Clark,
Thanks, Mike.
go to the expert here.
I love segues. Just don't fall off of them. All right, so previous to last couple months, there was no plans to bring utilities over here. They're quite a ways away. The interest was not there. Recently, as you remember, there was the Quiet Valley property that the city sold. The purchaser of that property wants to develop quicker than, sooner than later, but they're the farthest away from from any utilities. Now, there are utilities over here, but as far as sewer and everything else, the cost to bore underneath the highway here, as well as pressures and some other reasons, everything needs to go to the north. And the closest utility, there's some water here, and everything else is either way over here. Let me zoom out a little bit. Sorry, I'll speed up here. Either on Spanish Fork Parkway or clear up here. So you can imagine the distance to bring the utilities, plus you have private property all through there. So we have been working with a few folks and have developed this plan. Let me zoom in a little bit. That's a little too much. To bring utilities, so there's sewer, which is green, pressure irrigation, which is purple, and water that's blue. The only existing utility is this blue line that goes out to the Rose home here. We've been meeting with this property owner, and this property owner, and then the one that purchased our property. And today I drafted an agreement to have them all participate to run the utilities that distance. They're the four most imminent people to want to develop, and so that's what we're kind of working through.
So-
If this property it becomes more imminent that they are going to annex, if they do annex, then we might address them as well and maybe working them into this agreement.
So this would be the corridor that would be used to service this property and eventually all of this?
Correct.
Okay.
Which makes all those utilities close to, right by the bombs.
Yes,
Yep.
the bond property is right here.
Yep, so it would go right in front of your house.
What's the projected timeline on that?
D.R. Horton, which purchased this property, wants it done yesterday. I think they're the most anxious. Realistically, to get designed and out, we're still working 8 months to a year, I'm gonna say, but
It's not
We
bad
have-
in development
we have
time.
the city plus 4, maybe 5 if this, we have that conversation with them to all agree and get their ducks in a row. It could take a little bit.
And then the group that wants this annexed are, the Swift Creek. You're wanting it annexed because you want to develop it, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
What's your timeline? No, Swift Creek. I'm looking right over
Sorry.
you. I'm sorry.
I'll slide over a foot.
Oh, and we're supposed to have you
Come on
come
up.
to the.
You know what, we're going through the process of annexation, you know, and then we'll start, you know, master planning it and working with the city on the utilities. We know D.R. Horton is purchasing the city property. They are very excited to get started, so, you know, we're gonna follow suit with, you know, with that growth and the development of theirs, but this is the first step of getting it annexed.
And would your development be, would you be interested in sharing some of the cost of getting those services to your property?
Well, we figured that we understand that there will be some
You'll
offsites.
pay your share
Yeah,
eventually.
yeah, we understand there will be offsites.
Okay. But you see that happening in the next year, 3 years, 5 years, or do you have any idea?
I see something happening in the next year. I mean, You know, D.R. Horton's very aggressive.
Yes.
You know, and they have the funds to do it. And if we have everything lined up, I think it's very easy to see something move through.
Okay, thank you.
I think so.
Can I ask one question? That, moving that road right away down into the middle of the field, is there a purpose for that, or is it just to get a different?
The reason that we moved the right of way down is it'll line up better with the road going into the property. Instead of having everything on the far north, by moving it down, it'll line up with roads.
A little harder to water. A little harder to water.
What's the anticipated density for the property? We've enjoyed being away from everybody. And we've been to every meeting. I know that it's a high density for the things by the railroad tracks. And then I think when we came last time, the anticipation for the stuff closer to us was larger lots, kind of like estate lots. Is that what you're planning also on that side, or is it high density?
Well, it's not high density in the sort of townhomes, but we are going to master plan it and see how it lays out with density. Any other questions?
Any other questions for the applicant or for the owners?
No, I did have one question for staff, maybe for Michael. So one of the questions I heard from the Baum family was what would be the cost of them connecting to the utilities once they ran there? Do you have any idea? I mean,
Yeah, for sure. So, it's pretty fresh because I just spent 3 hours writing it. The general plan is for estate density, and this is a collector road. Because of that combination, these lines are 100% impact fee funded. So the idea is they get paid back over time, but we need someone to front those costs. So depending on how this agreement shakes out, and again, we need to have that conversation with both Swift Creek and perhaps the bonds as well, depending on how this shakes out. Again, the others are a little more firm in who the players are and what their plans are. This one's not quite as far along, but let's just say they say it's a 3-year, 5-year away. D.R. Horton and the rest are ready to go today. This line gets installed. They don't pay for any of the line out in the street. They just pay for the connection because they'll have a wall along that street. It's residential backyards. Again, in our policy, that's an impact fee funded. So they'd pay for their house. It'd be like $4,000 for the sewer and the drinking water. And then the irrigation, it sounds like they want to use the well, so.
and that's just their connection fee for the lateral?
I mean, it's an impact fee.
Yeah.
Wow.
We would charge any house.
Mike, if they developed, it'd be different.
Correct. If they develop, they keep their 3 acres or whatever, and then the rest they turn into houses, then it would be a different.
Sure.
Their house would still be the same connection, but they would also then have the fees associated with all the other lots too.
Very good.
But if they just want to keep one lot in that whole polygon shape there, it'd just be as if there were one single lot there.
So after this discussion, have you guys changed your minds at all? You're the matriarch.
I'll be here for another 10, 20 years.
You will.
I'll wait.
You will.
I think from my standpoint, we did have to hold up there for a reason. My mom likes to be away from people, so if you would please keep that into consideration as the annexation. Please be mindful of us being able to stay in the country.
We've lived in the city, we've moved out.
Is it compelling at all that there'd be a fee later if you were to try and annex in later to develop?
To be honest, we've been here 3 times to talk about annexation. I'm assuming you're going to come back to us and tell us that we need to be annexed. I don't think we'll be the ones asking.
Yeah.
We'll end up as the island, and you guys will tell us we have to come in eventually. I think that's what our idea is. Eventually, we'll be sucked up, but the longer we can stay out, I guess, from my mom's standpoint, is what she would prefer.
Well, I want to reiterate that if you are annexed, there is nothing that says that you have to do anything other than using that property as you are now. You don't have to sell it to anyone. You don't have to hook onto the utilities at all. You can stay RR, and that is the designation basically that you have with the county now. And like you said, you know, there's a slight difference, but not much. It's just about 6s in property tax. So it's up to you guys and totally up to you guys. It just gives you a little bit of flexibility when and if the time comes. You know, this is, if there ever was an idea that you might do something later, this would be a wise time to do that. However, that's your decision. That's not ours.
Appreciate all the talk and all the comments we've heard that, I've lived in Spanish Fork all my life, and then I moved up on Pitch there all by myself. And I just don't know. Can we come to the next meeting when I'm in?
You can come to all the meetings you'd like. You're welcome anytime.
I've been here an awful lot.
Like,
Anybody that harasses Commissioner Mendenhall as well as you do.
We've known each other too long.
for a long time, longer than we'd like to admit at times.
Mike?
One other thing real quick. So for access, we talked briefly about the one access that came with the purchase of the property that the applicant already spoke about. One thing to note is on our policy, one access can serve up to 50 homes or whatever a traffic study kind of shows. The 50 homes is our limit before second access has to be put in. So whether that second access is another access through the property and they space them out adequately, or the second access has to come through the Baum property, or the second access has to come through the Olson properties up here. So just know there is a cap on the number that you can serve off of one access.
Very true.
Wait a second, on the access to the Baum property, is that something you guys can just do a lien against and suddenly mark?
Oh, no. Well, I mean.
They'd have to access through you guys. You would control that.
Put Mark Stewart in the annex, I guess I would have to.
No, I was just throwing out the options are through this piece, or this piece. As far as the city, that would be more Dave and the legal side of things. I wouldn't imagine an eminent domain scenario for a specific development to get another access.
We've never done it. So that would be a first.
We would, I imagine, do something like that for a large arterial road or a big collector to connect a commercial center, not for a second access to a subdivision. So, again, just something to keep in mind as you consider where this piece lays out when it does develop.
Any other discussion or comment?
I was just gonna say, I don't think anybody realizes how much the wind blows up there.
There are
Yes,
windmills.
we do. Yes,
I do.
yes.
Yeah, the windmill, but we could not keep the blades on because of the wind blow.
Yeah.
Our neighborhood Facebook page, I live up on the bench as well. There's oftentimes I found someone's garbage can in my driveway.
Yeah.
Does someone want to come claim it?
Yeah, I live in the wind tunnel as well.
So,
So I,
We even built up there, was my husband gave me that piece of property and said, you can move out the day the wind don't blow. So I called Bill Nelson and I said, Bill, if the wind don't blow, run up and measure me off the house. And Bill said, okay. And one day the wind didn't blow and he ran up and built a house.
nice.
okay, I have a,
It's never quit since.
True.
That was the one day we built.
I have a suggestion. If we approve this annexation, I would suggest or request that we also, I don't know exactly how to say it, but that we also zone it, the R115 at the same time, to go with what the general plan is. Because my personal thought is that I think that we need to be true to what the general plan is for that area. The city does not have a lot of estate, it doesn't have a lot of R115. And I think we need to preserve, my opinion is we need to preserve that area to keep the distribution and be consistent with the general plan there.
Isn't that what's being asked? That's what, in the recommendation.
That's
Yes.
staff's
Yeah.
recommendation.
Yes.
Oh.
I thought staff's recommendation was to keep this parcel and this parcel rural residential?
Yes, so
Yes.
assuming that's what Commissioner Martin was talking about.
Right, yeah, that is.
So Shauna, just to be clear, you're saying R115 for all of this? And then
Yes.
RR through here?
Yes.
Okay,
Can I ask you a question?
let's make a motion.
R115.
That's the estate,
15,000 square feet per lot,
about a
minimum.
third acre.
Minimum.
Okay, thank you.
Large lots.
I'm gonna make a motion.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm gonna, before I do that, I want you to know I'm very sensitive to how long you've been there. I am hopeful that you'll come around and see it as opening more opportunities and options for you rather than less, and you can continue to do what you're doing now, but you have options, is what I would say. So in light of that, I'd make a recommendation that the Planning Commission recommend annexation of this property with staff's finding and with the zoning designation of, unfortunately, this laser is not going to be shown in this motion, but a zoning designation of R115 in the yellow highlighted area in staff's report, and a recommendation of a zoning designation of rural residential in the finger portion that is shown on staff report but not highlighted yellow. And otherwise adopt staff's recommendations as well.
We have a recommendation, or we have a motion. Do we have a second? Without a second, the motion dies. So,
It sounds like we need, are we done with this?
no. No.
More
Another
discussion?
motion can be made.
We can have more discussion?
Yep, more
We have more
discussion.
discussion. We can ask for more discussion from the people that are here.
I guess the reason I wouldn't second that, I'm close to that, but I don't see a reason to annex it. I think, like David said at the start, it's kind of a soft request.
All of it, or?
No, the Baum's property. I would approve the annexation of the other,
Okay.
but I don't see a reason to bring them into the city at this point.
And the power company?
Yeah, I would have it, in my mind, I would keep it the way it is depicted here, like you referenced, not the way we have it up here now, but the way it's depicted on our.
I was trying to save the bombs from future meetings every 3 months as well. I was trying to do you a favor.
I'm sure it was the most
Very
kindest.
altruistic, Todd.
Yes.
I think it's most advantageous for the BOMs as well to annex in for the future opportunities, for the money savings for them right now. But if really they feel like they don't want to annex it, I hate to go against their.
I guess
The property,
the next meeting, I'm okay coming back another time. I think maybe, Dave just barely let us know about this yesterday, or, he called me, a good discussion, so nothing negative, but, maybe we could just have a little bit of time, could we adjourn this topic until the next
That's
time?
another thing that we can do.
yeah.
And can I just, I mentioned this at the onset, and certainly continuing this, you have another meeting before this will be ready for a city council agenda in January, which is certainly an option. Or if you made whatever recommendation you wanted to make tonight, and if each of you as commissioners wanted to explain, your reasoning for voting one way or another on that, you certainly have, you would certainly have ample time, for additional discussion with us as staff and that type of a thing. I don't care either way, but that would save you from needing to go to one more meeting in the evening.
You guys are so
If
If we, it's a resolution route, so to clarify, if it's continued, the applicant would not hit the January meeting, just to make that.
Oh, so if we tabled it, they will not make the January meeting, is that right?
That's correct.
So one more item
I don't think
is,
that's
I don't,
necessarily the case. I think this would be on a council agenda, their next meeting, to start the resolution process regardless of what you do tonight. So, just to be clear.
So if we were to table this or
Uh-huh.
continue this,
Uh-huh.
this could come before the city council at their next meeting and be approved.
No.
No?
So,
Okay.
and again, this is a process that's a little bit, no, this is entirely new for me. But as I understand it, in fact, the council ended up canceling their meeting last night for a few reasons, but we had initially planned on having this annexation on their agenda simply to start the resolution process.
Okay.
Regardless of whether they met last night or they meet 2 weeks from last night,
Right.
because they only have one meeting in December, the first agenda for the council that this proposal could be on is their first meeting in January.
Right.
So I don't think your action, in fact, the law does not require you to take action on it. It's just the city ordinance that does. So if that helps in terms of the process that you'd be involved in, that's where it's at.
If we make the bombs come back, then we're gonna request either donuts or cookies, whichever you'd rather.
Have you ever seen me cook a donut?
Wait, we're supposed to bring you the donuts?
No. Our next meeting would be the 1st of December. I'm not sure of the date, but the first week, the first Wednesday.
I guess another alternative I was wondering, could you go ahead, I think what you were saying too, is like maybe go ahead and annex the one piece. Could we come back the following one after we've had a chance to think about it and decide if we want to be included in that, and then just put us in like I said, or keep us out?
I think then we're in scenario B that Dave described earlier.
Yeah, that leaves you
Wouldn't
as an
be, it'd be
island.
as a, they'd be requesting annexation after we'd already done this.
I didn't hear everything
You didn't
necessarily,
hear?
but
Oh.
I trust that you understand where
So
we're at.
if the bombs, if we went ahead tonight,
Uh-huh.
approved the annexation of Swift Creek as depicted here without including the bomb property or the Rocky Mountain Power property, they came back in a later meeting and wanted, and said, you know, we've reconsidered, would like to be annexed, then would be in that later scenario you described, right? Or would that, could it still be dovetailed or grandfathered in with this annexation?
You said something there that I think
They'd be
is
separate.
not right. So
I often do.
with the, that's a really poor way to put it. I'm sorry to say it that way.
Just
I just,
clarify.
to be clear, like the Development Review Committee that's made a recommendation on whether the property should be annexed and the zoning, that's the role that the Planning Commission plays here as well. So you'll make a recommendation at some point in time, and the City Council will consider that before they actually approve the annexation and assign the zoning. So certainly, whatever recommendation you make tonight, we go forward with that, and that's something that the council would take under consideration. And if the bombs had a change of heart, for example, and, you know, maybe presented
Want to remove
a
it?
different request for the council in that discussion, that certainly could change how
And
they
you-
look at things.
Oh.
But, well, I guess my question was is the timing of it. If they come back before the city council meets, would it all be considered one process? Or what if they, I'm getting a head nod, so I guess it would be.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
we-
I think up until the council votes,
Okay.
they have an opportunity, the council has an opportunity to take input from whoever they care to. And actually, this is not a public hearing with you. There is a public hearing required with the city council.
That's right.
So, you know, they would have the benefit of input from the bombs or anybody else that wanted to weigh in.
So I wonder if it'd be okay with the bombs if we went ahead with the proposal to annex everything, including you guys tonight, and give you guys the opportunity to come back to request from the city council to be removed from the annexation.
After your own thorough
That work?
discussions of the pros and cons.
Then that way, if you guys feel good about it, we don't have, no cookies, no donuts. But if you feel like you just don't want to do that, you still have the opportunity to opt out. And that would be something that we could do. So, you know, I think it's an opportunity for you guys. I hate to see that go by the wayside for you. And I think that would be a good thing. And if you guys discuss this and have a different, you know, if you feel differently about it, it's still open. It's still open. Is that okay? Okay, I'd entertain a motion again.
The same one?
Same one, I believe.
All right, I'm gonna make the same motion in light of how I perceive it giving more options to the bombs and not less, and doesn't infringe upon the rights they currently enjoy, as well as makes that access road through the Rocky Mountain Power site a lot less convoluted when it's gonna be partially in the county and partially in the city. So I'm making the following recommendation, that the portion of the staff report highlighted in yellow be recommended zoned R115 and annexed into the city, along with the Baum property and the Rocky Mountain Power property, that is that finger not highlighted, also be annexed into the city with a rural residential zoning, and otherwise adopt the staff's conditions of approval.
Second that.
It's been, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Bombs. We really appreciate your working with us. Hey, I think it was time well spent, though. I think we really needed to discuss your options.
We need a quick break.
Yes, let's do.
She's a good one.
Okay, with that, we're going to take a 5-minute break before we finish.
Drinks or nuts or treats? Any of the above?
Restroom.
8 years.
We've already reviewed Title 15 stuff, right?
Okay,
All right, Dave.
we're back in session.
We'll be in touch.
We'll move on to number 6 on our agenda tonight, Title 15 amendments. We'll turn it over to Dave.
That's it. It doesn't get any easier than that. That number change, in my view, is quite
I'd like to make a motion.
non-consequential. We
I make-
invite you to
Oh, this is a public hearing?
invite any public to speak. That shouldn't take long.
Doesn't say it on the.
But again, nominal change, but this makes a really important project possible.
And is that the only change we have to Title 15?
Everything that's proposed tonight.
I'm interested to see what the other 40 to 80 acres are going to be used for, that this has to get changed to the 36 instead of 40.
Well,
Me too.
if you remember,
Me too.
it's Top Golf.
That's right, yeah.
I like Topgolf.
We just know that Dave can't talk about it yet.
It might be a Kelly Slater wave pool, though.
Could
That
be.
would work for there as well.
Is there any discussion on this?
Public hearing.
Public hearing.
It is a public hearing, so we will now go into public hearing. Is there any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll go out of public hearing, and I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a
I'm
motion.
chewing. I gotta get it.
All right.
Go ahead.
I make a motion that we approve, adopt, recommend to the city council. Is it a recommend to the city council? That, that this amendment is changed from 36 to 40 as recommended? Do I need-
From 40 to 36.
From 40 to 36, as recommended.
Very good.
Perfect.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anything else before we go to item number 7?
Thank you. Yes.
There's one thing that I might bring up before we do adjourn, and that is our next meeting.
That's
and
where I was going.
whether we have a work
So-
session.
So, honestly, that's exactly where I was headed.
Okay.
I appreciated the chance to meet last week. We're game for that whenever you guys are. So with kind of the same pattern in mind, your next meeting will be on December 2nd. That's the first Wednesday in December, just as is typical. So then the week before that, that's Thanksgiving. The Wednesday the week before, the conflict that I typically have doesn't exist, but it's the night before Thanksgiving. The Tuesday the week before, I'm available. We'd be happy to meet then. What are your thoughts?
What's the agenda
That's
look
just
like?
2 weeks, right?
Then that ends up being
three.
3 weeks.
I'd ask, how robust is the agenda?
The agenda right now, we have, this is what we're aiming for at least. You remember seeing a general plan amendment for a condominium or apartment project that will be just west of the neighborhood Walmart.
Yeah.
They have applications submitted for zone change and the site plan approval for that. I think there's a pretty good chance that that's going to be ready for your December agenda. And other than that, there was one other thing that honestly I wouldn't say was a real big deal. Probably wouldn't take a lot of time. So that December agenda right now does look pretty light.
I make a motion that we maybe just have the planning commissioning meeting, but if we don't, we have a little bit of a work session right before it on the 2nd.
I would prefer that as well.
An hour before.
Second, I got a
That's
second.
So are you saying
Second.
just for November, or, I
Just for
quite
December.
liked the meeting last week.
I do too when there's an agenda, because actually I felt so much more prepared for tonight.
I did, I
I don't know
felt
about-
much more prepared. I also would like the opportunity, I don't know when the city's gonna start looking at, like along City Creek and that stuff we talked about with the interchange.
Yeah.
Getting ideas of what that, I mean, I love the presentation, but I don't know what input we can have with the city or what help we can have with establishing what kind of plan along there is. There's many tweaks. And I don't know if that could be a topic of work sessions also as we go through that. I don't know what the staff's feelings on that would be, or if it's just, hey,
I think Dave's abandoning the TDRs anyway, so we don't even need to.
well, that's not one, that's a separate topic that I hope he's not abandoning.
Maybe connected.
I'm just
Maybe
kidding.
connected.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I don't know about you guys, but the closer to the holidays it gets, the tougher it is to have evenings that don't conflict with something. So I would prefer to not have a meeting like we had last. By the way, that was great. But I'd prefer to go until January for our next meeting like that.
Sure.
I agree.
And I'll tell you, and we touched, it was down 2 months ago on kind of this work program concept to where we keep a running list and we review that. I think it'd be great to start the meeting with that and to talk more about that project, the 2700 North Interchange, and just now what maybe some logical next steps might be in terms of looking at the general plan and looking at zoning. I think that needs to happen. We haven't brought that project this far to stop now, so.
But it's okay if we don't have a work session during.
Oh, it's fine,
holidays.
yeah.
I'll put it this way, the city council meets one time in December, and that's really customary for
I'd
public
appreciate
bodies
having
across the state, so.
work session just an hour before
Okay,
That'd work.
December meeting.
okay.
So,
And, sorry.
no, go ahead, finish.
I was gonna say,
I have a different thought.
The agenda is probably, and I will regret saying this, right, but right now I think it's light enough that, after you get through with the business items that night, if there were other things you wanted to work on in a work session, there should be time for that as well.
You say that, but we're talkers.
Hey, that's,
I'm in favor of trees in the park strips. Everyone else?
I am
We can just knock
totally
that out now.
100% for
Trees.
trees in the park strips. How do we change that?
I spent an hour today with our Parks and Recreation Director and the employee that's in charge of maintaining all of the city park space. We started talking about different issues, but that's where we ended. And we need probably to get some more resources as the city to make that happen. So that's,
Employee that takes care of all the city park space.
He's a great guy.
actually, no, but probably somebody with some expertise that we don't have now. And more importantly, though, somebody that maybe could devote the time that it's going to take just to get that off the ground. That's our bugaboo right now is just having somebody that can focus on something long enough to make it happen.
So maybe just keep that on our list, our work session list too, to keep reporting on that.
Until it happens.
Yeah.
I've had occasion to ride around Spanish Fork a little bit, especially in the areas that are developing in the last few weeks. The neighborhoods that have the trees already look better, even though those trees aren't mature, even though they're only 6 feet tall and everything else. They have more of a personality, they have more character. And so I like that. However, if the city owns those trees, that becomes quite a burden. I mean, you could be talking thousands and thousands of trees.
But it would be
Here's
part
the
of
thing.
I take care of the trees in my park strip, though.
Very
I'm
good.
a model citizen.
Yes, you are.
But that would
Well,
be part of the
they're
developers.
city trees, so,
They're
I mean,
city
one
trees. So if
other
one
way
dies,
to look at it to that concern, John, that creates a bigger burden for the city. Right now, somebody plants a tree of whatever species they choose and whatever quality it is and that type of a thing, that ultimately becomes the city's responsibility.
that's right.
When it's in that park strip between the sidewalk and the curb, so the idea that we would play a more direct role in determining what kind of tree gets planted and how it gets planted and that type of a thing, potentially that could eliminate work for the city down the road if it's the right tree in the right place. Trees that aren't going to break up sidewalk and or do other things that happen when people go to a nursery and say, man, this looks beautiful, and that's how you get trees. So
But I had an experience just a few weeks ago of one person that's more in Shauna's neighborhood, whose trees had overgrown a bit, and the city came in and
Exactly.
trim those trees out in the street, not, and they would have done it if they were low enough on the sidewalk. So it's already happening, like you say.
My neighbor
But-
across the street, that just happened.
So, the city's already active in that,
Yeah,
and there's no
there's-
power lines, there's nothing like that. It's just preserving the trafficability of the street. and
Whether
the-
it's clear vision or literally getting limbs, so that they don't get hit by trucks.
Right,
And things like that. There is a certain amount of money that we spend on that every year.
anyway,
Yep.
okay.
Incidentally, when it comes to the work program, I'm going to send you guys an email sometime the next day or two, just with what we listed out the last time we talked about it. And please take that just as food for thought if there are things that you think maybe we should add to that, or if there are things there that you maybe think should be a particular priority. I feel very strongly that that should be your marching orders for staff, and we will follow your direction on working on those things, and we'd love your input. So
My change of thought, if you're done with that topic.
I'm done.
What Joseph mentioned TDRs, where are we at? Has there been brought up to speed with where, at the end of our work session, you talked about how you're gonna meet with the different commissioners and go over that. Has that happened? What is the next step of that?
I need to meet with Commissioners Trainer and Mendenhall and Euler, I guess now that I think about it. So we're halfway through, just in terms of that. And the details of what I think we're ultimately going to propose for people to think about, they really haven't changed in the last couple of months of what we've been talking about. Our attorney is helping us put a finer point on some language. He and the city manager and I are meeting weekly to go over that. And I say this guardedly because in August I would have said that
I'm totally
you know,
going to
we're
hold you
gonna-
to whatever you say
we're
next.
going to get it done in September, at least the next significant step. But the idea certainly is that before the end of the year, we have something out there and we're taking public comment from the community as a whole.
Great.
Yeah, as I've talked with some of you about it, you know that I'm anxious, as in nervous, about how it's going to go. But we're at a point, I think, to where we need to just peel the curtain back. Not that we've been hiding anything, but just start to get people's thoughts and go from there.
Make sure when you open that curtain that you say, this is a vision for our community to keep historic, to have a vision for the future. You know that already.
Well, it's funny you put it that way because the hour that the city manager and I spent yesterday talking about it, it's Wednesday, right? Yeah, yesterday, it was all about, hey, how do we somehow get the message out there in such a way that people can embrace it, to where we stand a fighting chance to start with, to where, for example, it's not just maybe some of the more vocal property owners in the river bottoms that don't like it, and therefore, that's maybe what the press zeroes in on or something like that, and we immediately then are working out of a whole instead of at least on equal footing and that type of a thing. So, for example, and I'll mention this, and this is still being publicly broadcasted, and I guess welcome the opportunity to share this thought. We anticipate there being some pushback from different people that may disagree with the approach. Frankly, I've been very disheartened at the level of distrust that people have for the city, and I think that will certainly influence the type of feedback that we get out of the chute. Having some community leaders that aren't city employees, appointed officials, elected officials, or the like, that are weighing in on the pros and cons of what we're trying to do and giving us just some honest feedback. I think that becomes a really important part of making sure that we're getting comprehensive input on it and hopefully, making some more balanced decisions and that type of thing, so.
I think one other thing too is you can start out a conversation saying partly based on the response to our surveys, the overwhelming response was that Spanish Fork wants the river bottoms to stay green, to stay the way they are. So anyway.
Yeah, but at the same time, the city has put a lot of effort into the property owner's perspective and rights, and is very concerned about that. And I think Dave and staff have agonized and worked hard to make sure this is as good of a proposal as they can for everybody. And so hopefully it can be presented correctly and they'll appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely.
Toughest one we're gonna face.
Honestly, I think so. Like in my
Easily.
career, I don't see anything after
Easily.
that's more of a challenge. than
I'd
that.
love to hear what the city council what their response to it is too.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that'll take the most heat.
You're probably right, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Everyone, thank you. Appreciate your time, your service, for sure.
Thanks, guys. We will adjourn.
Vote with your feet.
Vote with
Okay,
your
Dave,
feet.
I have 2 questions for you.
Oh, and do you remember the intersection?
Veteran for this team, again, a senior, and so, but she made the most of the time that she was on the court. That's